says live. Are we live? Or...
Yeah, yep.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. How are you? Welcome to our event this evening with Abigail Johnson and Becky Wallace. My name is Lane. I am the events coordinator here at Weller Bookworks. And we're so pleased to have both of you here. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you.
So I just want to go through a couple of things before I turn the time over to Becky and Abigail. We've been catching up on hosting these virtual events. Slowly, I'm learning how to do these, and believe me, it's been a long slog for me. I don't come nicely to technology, but it's coming, and we've got a lot more coming up. Our next one is actually tomorrow at 3 o'clock. We will have Edward Power and Craig Gordon here doing their book Dragons in the Snow. It's about mountain rescue and mountaineering in general. And then we've got events coming up for the Utah Humanities Book Festival. We've got several in the next month or so that we are co-hosting, and you can check those out on our website or our Facebook event page or the Utah Humanities Book Festival page. And then every other week, the second and fourth Wednesdays of every month, we do our virtual knitting club, which
That's fun.
We've been doing it for a long time, and the owner has been missing it dearly. And so we started doing it virtually. We affectionately call it Lit Knit. And second and fourth Wednesday of every month. If you would like to be invited, you can email me at Lane, Lane, at wellerbookworks.com, and I will make sure you get a copy to the Zoom link for that. Okay, we're running just a few minutes behind, so I'm gonna do a quick intro and turn the time over to these lovely authors. We've got Becky Wallace here this evening. Her book is Far From Normal. You can see a little picture of it on the event page, along with Abigail Johnson's book, Girl on the Run. And there's Far From Normal right back there.
We both have some product placement happening.
There they are. Far From Normal is a sort of a young adult sportsy rom-com, I've been told, and the Girl on the Run is a YA thriller, which I understand is the first thriller you have done. Is that right, Abigail?
Yes, my first thriller.
And it came out yesterday.
And it's so
good. So anyhow, I'm going to go dark. I'm going to let these two ladies talk to you for a while, read some things, and then I'll come back towards the end to facilitate any questions you might have. If you have any thoughts or questions throughout the presentation, you can just put them on into the Facebook chat, and I'll relay them after the two of these authors are finished. Okay, take it away, ladies.
Thank you. Abigail, I'm so glad you could be here with me tonight. This is so fun, and I'm so excited to see your face. I haven't seen you for months.
Since January.
Since January. It's been a long time.
I miss your face. It's nice.
I know. We have cute faces. We should share faces more often. So really quick, I wanted to remind everyone, drop a question on Facebook, and we'll pick one of you tonight, or Lane will pick one of you to receive a $15 gift card to the bookstore, so you can buy more books, because we love shopping small and supporting local businesses. Abigail, why don't you tell us about you?
Yes. Should I tell you about the book?
Yes, a little book.
Okay, so here's the cover again. So this is Girl on the Run, and it is my first YA thriller. It's about a girl named Katelyn who is a little bit tired of her mom's self-proclaimed wanderlust, causing them to suddenly pack up and move to a new state, to a new house, to a new life every few months. And so she thinks that maybe her mom needs some incentive to stay in one place for a little longer. So she decides to surprise her with a dating profile, thinking that this will be great, it'll help her mom find somebody, everybody will win. And it turns out to be a horrible idea, because her mom hasn't just been overprotective her whole life, she's been hiding something. And now that Katelyn has exposed them on the internet, they're being hunted. And so she ends up on the run alone, trying to unearth the secrets of the past and stay ahead of whoever's chasing her. And she ends up allying herself with the guy who brought this nightmare to her door. And she doesn't know if he is an enemy or an ally or maybe something more, because as they she discovers along the way, her mom hasn't just been hiding, she's been waiting. And now Katelyn doesn't know who to trust or what to believe because it's all going down. So that's Girl on the Run. What can you tell us about Far From Normal?
Okay, so Far From Normal is, like Lane said, a sportsy rom-com. It is my second sportsy rom-com. This one is about a girl named Maddie. She has landed what she hopes is going to be like the dream summer internship with her aunt's sports marketing company, but it ends up being a lot of fetching coffee and sorting through tabloids for the client that her aunt takes on, until she has kind of an unfortunate accident. And by unfortunate, I mean she crashes a bike into a soccer tournament. And and she's like in a dress. Anyway, and that because of that, she actually runs into one of her aunt's most high profile clients. He is a Major League Soccer star. He's 19. He's from Italy. His name is Gabriel Fortunato, and he's really cute. But he's also he's also been in a little bit of tabloid trouble. And she's tasked with helping him improve his social media. But the more she gets to know him, the more she realizes that all the stories she's reading in the magazines aren't 100% true. And it complicates both her job and her feelings. So it's kind of fun.
I love it. It's by far my favorite rom-com of the year.
Oh, thank you.
Ever. I love it so much. Even if I didn't know you, I'd be like stalking you online, being like,
oh, thank you. That is so sweet. So I wanted to ask you, you have been a contemporary author up to this point. I mean, technically Girl on the Run is still contemporary, like it's happening now. But what made you make the jump to writing a thriller?
So I actually didn't publishing is weird. You write books and sometimes, different books come out at different times. So I actually wrote Girl on the Run when I was querying my first book.
Oh, really?
I wrote Girl on the Run and Every Other Weekend when I was querying my first book. So, because it took, you query for a long time. I queried for about a year for my first book. And I was, because I started querying way too early. And so I was revising as I went along. And I actually ended up getting an R&R, which if you're not in publishing, is a revise and resubmit request from an agent for If I Fix You. So I was working on that and I got the idea for Girl on the Run. And it just would not stay out of my head. Like it was one of those like, write me. And so I had no business writing this book. I had this R&R that I needed to get done, but I couldn't stop thinking about this idea. So I literally put on the R&R and in 4 days, I wrote like the first 100 pages of this book. And I was like, okay, that's enough. I've got enough of you down, stay there and I'll come back to you later. And as it turned out, I ended up signing If I Fix You with a different agent, and we wanted to develop my contemporary list after that, so we did that. And then the timing came about for Girl on the Run, and I was talking to my agent about it, and she said, let's see what we can do with this. And so here we are now. So I didn't necessarily like write for contemporaries and then switch to a thriller. It was just, it wasn't the time for that book, and now it is. So that's kind of how it happened. So
I totally get. I feel like there's a lot of that in publishing. I mean, I started Stealing Home, which was last year, so the sports contemporary that came last year. I started that book 7 years ago, and it just sat for a long time because I had a few chapters, and I was excited about the characters and about the world. Like the world, I mean, it's baseball. It was about minor league baseball. But at the same time, it didn't just feel like the right time to move forward with that story. I was working on fantasy, and fantasy was going great. And then it just happened, right? And then once that was done, then Far From Normal fell right into line after it.
So that was an intentional jump for you? Because like you said, you did come from fantasy to contemporary. Like what was the thought process there? Or was it just the idea that wouldn't leave you alone?
So I think you'll understand this, and other people who have ever been frustrated by the published industry will too. So Story Spinner, which was my first book, was actually my fourth finished manuscript. And then since that time, I have, well, between Story Spinner and Stealing Home, I wrote 9 complete manuscripts.
Whoa.
And I couldn't, for the life of me, and it didn't matter what I wrote, nothing seemed to be being picked up in the fantasy world. So I was frustrated and I was sad, and my husband was like, before you quit, just write one story for yourself, like write something that you just love. And so I did. So I sat down and I pulled up that document that I had started years ago, and I finally found that story. And luckily I found an editor who absolutely loved like that sportsy girl in kind of a male dominated business.
Yep.
And from that we were able to do both books. So that's good.
Well, that actually leads me into one of my questions for you. So you obviously with Stealing Home was a baseball book, and now Far From Home is a soccer book. What's the next sport on the docket for you? And do you think that you'll always want to weave sports and contemporary romance kind of stories? Is that kind of the formula that you really love, or how do you see that going?
So I worked in sports for a long time, and I feel like once I run out of sports careers that I did, I probably won't have enough material. I feel like it's still an area for girls to be able to want to achieve. There's just not a lot of women in sports business and sports broadcast. And those are the things that I know. So I do have kind of a football story that I'm tinkering with, that I'm working on. And that would be, football is actually like my sport. It's like the sport of my heart. So I would love to be able to work on a football story. What are you working on right now? Are you working on more contemporary, more thrillers?
Yeah, so I have 3 like the most opposite projects you can imagine right now. So I have another thriller that I'm working on, and I have another contemporary that I'm working on, and then I have something else that I'm not allowed to talk about that I'm working on that's totally different for me, but I'm really excited about it, so. Oh, am I frozen or are you frozen? No, okay, there we go.
Okay,
So we'll see. I can't talk about anything. Okay, I don't have anything like official to share, but yes, another contemporary and another thriller, and then mystery, surprise, not a mystery, an unknown surprise kind of thing. So
that's exciting.
What about you? Besides the football book, are you toiling with anything else?
So I just finished another fantasy, and I was a little hesitant to like go back to that world, but I found a story that I was really passionate about. I did a ton of research, so I would say it was more of a historical fantasy, so it's a little bit different than what I've done in the past. It's inspired by the women who inspired the Greek mythology of the Amazons. So don't think Wonder Woman, don't think like lasso belt, gold sparkles, no gold tiara. They were actually the women of Scythia and Dasha, which are countries that don't exist anymore. And they were real women warriors. So I kind of took that and made it into a story. So
I love Greek mythology.
Yeah.
Athena kind of stuff. I'm not sure I know the specifics as much as you do, but that sounds exciting.
Yeah, it's very fun. I love history, obviously, and it was fun to try my hand at something new. So here I have a question for you.
Okay.
Tell me about one character at the middle of somewhere in this book, and what you feel like makes them interesting.
I would say all the characters are so. No, I'm trying to think about because this book is so like every chapter pours into the next one faster, and there's so many like secrets and things that you reveal. I'm trying to think what that's not going to be like spoilery,
Oh yeah.
I loved Katelyn.
Yeah.
It's so exciting because not that this would ever happen to somebody. Well, maybe it would, but just the idea that your life could just completely flip upside down in a matter of moments, and then you are just alone and terrified, and yet you find this inner determination and this drive, and you you discover that you're stronger than you ever could have imagined, and in a way you almost become grateful for the horrible situation that gave you that strength. And I loved discovering that with her character. So that was really fun for me to write. And I don't know, I connected to that because that's kind of a universal sort of a thing.
Right.
In her situation, it's like this extreme, life and death kind of thing. But I think that that's something that we can relate to. Everybody can.
Definitely.
And I love that, Katelyn in particular. What about you? Was there a character like that for you?
So, well, in your book, one of the characters that I loved, actually, she wasn't on the page a lot, but I loved that her mom had a secret and kept it for so long. And she was so smart, without being spoilery, she was so smart about the way she lived her life, that when all the pieces come out at the end, you're like she was brave and she was strong, and she had such a good compass, right? She knew what she needed to do. So without saying anything else, I mean, I really loved that about her mom in the book.
Yeah. I know I liked about her mom too is that this is not spoiler, I think this helps you understand her character. Like you said, her own compass, and whether or not people would agree with that,
right?
This is right, and this is what I'm going to do, and I don't care about anything else or what other people are going to think. And so it's is it gray, is it black or white? For her, she was making the absolute decisions based on what was most important to her and what mattered. And yeah, definitely there was some stuff, and you have to see whether or not you agree with her motivation and stuff for the book. But that was fun to explore too.
She was a great character. So yeah, I mean, there were lots of great characters, but I don't think, maybe I just don't think moms get enough credit. But so I guess my book, I love Gabe, right? I mean, I love Maddie. Everybody loves Maddie. You have to love a girl who doesn't feel special, who doesn't feel like she's extraordinary, who doesn't feel gifted, who is really just great at working hard. And I feel like that is something that every reader can relate to. But when I set out to write Gabe, people always have in their heads that athletes are one way, right? Oh, they're players, or they're bad with money, or they're hotheads. And when I worked in sports, one of the things I learned was that the majority of the guys that I worked with were actually really pretty good human beings. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to kind of shed a light on how much weight fame puts on people, and how little privacy someone like that has. And so he was very fun to explore because he had an online personality, and then he had his actual personality. So I got to build him in kind of two different ways. It was fun. I really like that.
I love how you handled that too, because obviously in our age of social media and different people have different followings, and in his case, obviously he was this huge celebrity. There was this impression of him and this ideal that the world had because of the little snippets that they'd seen of him, the very, I don't want to spoil anything, but the way he was portrayed in the media, and it was just this one-sided story about him. And even as the reader, you come into it, and this is what we're hearing about him, and you start getting these glimmers of wait a minute, there's something there that doesn't quite add up. I felt like you balanced that so well, and that you portrayed the pressure that he's 19, this young man was under, and the way he sort of, I don't know, there were so many cool, I don't want to spoil things, but I just loved, I loved him, but I loved the way you crafted him and the way you revealed his character to us and to Maddie. Mm-hmm. It allowed us to fall in love with him, with her, and to want him for her.
Well, thank you. That is so lovely. So I actually wanted to talk a little bit about some swoony moments within your book. And I know the funny thing is it's a thriller, right? But you managed to kind of build up this romantic tension. Where did you pull those little bits and pieces from?
Well, it's funny because I told you, I wrote this book so fast. Mm-hmm. And initially I did not anticipate the romantic storyline. it just sort of came, and I'm one of those people, I'm a plotter. So I always write a synopsis first, but again, with this one, I didn't. I just had this story and I was like, get it out as fast as I can. So I drafted the whole book first, you know. Normally now I write a synopsis and I plan stuff out. So in this case, though, I didn't quite know that the romance was going to happen until I started writing the characters and I was realizing, oh, wait a minute.
Like,
She's noticing
there's something happening here.
You said something to her, this, you know. And what was so interesting to me is like normally with my contemporary kind of romance books, they span months and months, almost a year, you know. This one takes place in 4 days. Right. So the romance in it is so, it's fast, but it's also unencumbered by anything but the immediacy of the moment that they're in. So they're not, you know, overthinking anything. They're not worrying about what are my friends going to think? What are his friends going to think? Well, you know, anything like that, or even, can I trust you? Are you, you know, it's just, how do I feel in this moment? What is going, you know, so it was kind of fun to be able to write romantic tension that is completely isolated from anything else. So that was kind of fun to play around with this one. Well,
and you're so close to the characters because you're in there, you're in every moment with these characters.
There's no break.
And I feel like you did such an amazing job, like stretching that tension, like where you want, like you literally, like I found myself like leaning into the book. I'm like, oh, this is so good, right? Like I these tense moments, whether it's like an action moment or it's a romance moment. And I mean, is there some secrets that you have to? I mean, do you, when you revise, when you edit, do you like go through and say to yourself like, I'm going to edit for tension, or what is it really, or are you just that good?
Well, I mean, I edit for I edit for character. So I, you know, like when I'm doing my revisions, I'll read through for the main character, you know, what's going on with that main character, and then I'll read specifically for another main character, and make sure that their arcs make sense and that they're hitting the right points. But for the romance, I feel like I've just been really fortunate with it just always made sense. You know, like with it's like, this is the way this has to happen. This is, you know, and I read for that swoony kind of feel, you know, where it's like, if I read something, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm feeling, you know, if I can think about them as not like people on a piece of paper, but like actual real life people, and I'm just sort of watching their lives, you know, if I get that feeling where it's like, you know, like the way your books make me feel, then I know I did a good job.
Thank you.
So if we're talking about romance, though, we've got to talk about Far From Normal and some of the scenes you had in there. The roof scene, oh my gosh.
It's my favorite.
I blushed so hard. It was so romantic and so swoony. Like, how did that scene come about? Like, did you know, like, early on, like, that scene's happening?
So that scene actually almost got cut.
Shut up.
No, like, so I wrote Far From Normal in 26 days. It's the fastest I've ever written a book. It was one of those, I submitted 35 pages and a synopsis to my editor, and she was like, yes, I love it. Can you have it back to me by the end of the month? And I was like, what? Yeah, of course I can. Yes, I can definitely do that. So, I mean, it was really fast, and I nailed the first 25%, and I nailed the last 25%, and I totally screwed up the middle 50%. And she gave me a list like, this has to go, and this has to go, and this has to go, and you need to change this, and you gotta move this here, and that was that was on the cut list, and I was like, no, it's my favorite, so it has to stay. So I figured out a way to move it within the story to keep the elements of that scene. I actually lived in the building that Maddie lives in, and so I'd never kissed anybody on the sun deck, but it did have this amazing sun deck that looked out over Lincoln Park and Lake Michigan, and you could see Michigan Avenue. And it was like perfect. And I remember sitting up there on the sun deck by myself, thinking to myself, you know what? This would be like a great place to bring a guy. And then I never did it. But so like it lived in my head for a long time. And finally I got to write it down. I got to write down the thing I never got to live. I feel like a lot of our stories are that way, where we're writing out things that we never actually get to do. And so I mean, there's fortune cookies and Chinese food and rooftop kissing. So
well, I'll tell you guys who are watching, when you get to the roof scene, you will know, because it's one of those moments where you read it. It's the kissing scene where as soon as you finish it, you kind of let the book fall against your chest and you just take that deep breath of just like happy perfectness, and then you immediately turn the page because you have to find out what happens.
Well,
In the piano scene. That was my other favorite one.
I love the piano scene too, because I really feel like there's something very attractive about musicians, like guy musicians, right? Or like people that are passionate about people that are passionate about anything is attractive, right?
But that scene in particular, and I will, people you guys have read, a lot of you will have read that story. It's so emotional and touching. And you can see the love that is growing in that moment, even though it's not an overtly romantic scene, not like the roof scene, which is super romantic. It's one of those bonding scenes where you're just like, I don't know, I loved it a lot.
Well, thank you so much. So one of the questions I wanted to ask you, I have this whole list on my computer screen, and so if you were going to recommend your book to someone who loved another book, what other book would you say, like, if you loved this book, you would probably also love my book?
You know what? I have to admit, I haven't read a ton of YA thrillers.
I don't think there are that many.
No, but listen, there are, but I feel like there's a distinction between kind.
Okay.
Like we can think of like books like One of Us is Lying and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's a different kind of thriller than what I wrote. Those are the kind of thrillers that are, I'm trying to think of and I haven't even read that one. I just know.
They're like murder mysteries more than anything, right?
Murder mysteries, but also like teen vicious, like, you know, Pretty Little Liars, that kind of stuff, which is different. Like mine, I would say is more like a Jason Bourne kind of a situation.
That's exactly what it is.
It's more of an action thriller, you know, suspense novel, not so much a
like an internal. It's not an internal novel. It's an external novel where like things are happening.
Straight up running for her life every single chapter of this book. You know?
I think Jason Bourne is a really good example. So like if you said, you know, if you love the Bourne movies, then you would probably love this book.
And I love, and again, because it's like there's, like I said, there's the romance, but it's much, you know, there is a lot of action and suspense, and like every single chapter is like, holy crap, how's she gonna get through this? You know, people chasing her, shooting guns. I mean, you know, car chases and you know, it's so that's the kind of stories that I like personally, that are more like adrenaline suspense, like, you know, where you have to figure it out while your life is imminently in danger, as opposed to more psychological kind of, you know.
Right.
If that makes sense.
No, well, I mean, I got it at like 8 p.m. and I finished it at 2 a.m. Like I did it, like I stayed awake, and my husband was like, "Hey, you gonna turn that off?" And I was like, "Nope, I'm not. I'm gonna keep reading."
No, I love that so much. And it's not a super long book. Like this is definitely a book you can read in just a handful of hours. Mm-hmm. It's a one sit read, and it's designed to be that way. Like all of the chapters are cliffhanger. Like I want you to suffer on that page. Because again, that's the nature of this storyline, is she doesn't get a break, you don't get a break, you know?
That's not a bad thing at all. No, I mean, Far From Normal is also actually it's really quick. It's the shortest book I've ever written.
I read it in one day. I think they're about the same length of pages. I think I looked it up and we're like within like 5 pages of each other. I read yours in one night, and it was the happiest night I've had all year. It was so great. What would you say if you were trying to recommend Far From Normal to somebody that likes something else? How would you pitch it? Like, if you like this, you'll like.
So
I have answers if you don't.
People say Devil Wears Prada, which it's not as mean. It's not quite as mean as Devil Wears Prada, but there's a lot of that, like that internship feel, and that that battle to kind of get to the top, and you know, people undercutting each other. That I can kind of see that. I can see that comparison. I've actually never read Devil Wears Prada, so
I've never read it either. But we've all seen the movie, right?
I saw the movie. It was great. Yeah. So I mean, that.
Also, How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days.
I love that movie. That's such a great movie.
Yeah, that one to me almost more than Devil Wears Prada, because of the relationship that they have, where they're forced to work together, and it's, you know, she's got, you know, her presuppositions about him, and he, you know, and then love sparks, and the great dress. I actually
love dresses, right? Gotta love fashion.
I'm sorry, but I hope you have to tell me that Maddie's dress is like has a real life inspiration somewhere.
I do. I have a picture somewhere. I will post it. I will send it to you.
No, post it. We all want to see it. It sounds so beautiful in that moment. And that's again one of the things I loved about Far From Normal is you give us all those like classic rom-com kind of moments that we want. Yes, we get like the super swoony rooftop sunset kiss kind of moment, but then we get like the bang killer dress kind of moment. And like when you did that, I almost wanted to cheer. I was so happy. You know what I mean? Like when you read like certain genres of books, you sort of have this checklist that you're making, like, I hope she gives me this. I hope she gives me this.
Yeah.
And like, you know, you gave me stuff I didn't even know I wanted, and I was so happy.
Well,
so yes, please post the dress photo.
I will
make a cute little on Canva or something for us.
Yeah, I need to have like a look page for Maddie. Yes. That's a good idea.
Do like a mock-up, like a 17 magazine kind of like mock-up.
That would be so cute. Such a good idea.
Do it.
So I have one last question for you, and then we're going to turn it back to Lane and see if there's anyone anyone else who has questions for us. But this is a question that somebody asked me, and I thought it was kind of an interesting question for an author. So okay. How do you feel like your work changes you as a person?
Oh, okay. You know, I think now that I've written 5 books now, it makes you aware of certain priorities that you didn't quite know you had about your worldview.
Mm-hmm.
I would say. I've written like 3 books, and I remember being at like a book event and somebody asked me a question about, do you intentionally blah, 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 blah in all your books? And I remember sitting there staring at her and I was like, I didn't know I did that. And then I was thinking about it, I was like, yeah, I do. And the thing is that in all of my books, I never give my characters quote unquote magic wands to fix the problems in their lives. You know, I feel like too often in stories and things we see characters, you know, will go through a hardship or something difficult, and eventually something happens that sort of undoes that problem. And I never do that in my books. I never do that in my books because I don't think that's often how real life happens. You know, hard, difficult things happen, and it's not that they suddenly go away or they change. It's that you learn to adjust and thrive and triumph over those circumstances, and you gain strength and you gain perspective, and you persist and carry on and find new ways to be happy and new ways to see your life. And I do that with all my books. I did that in Girl on the Run, and I wasn't even thinking about it in this book.
Yeah.
But that's how I view life, and just in my own situation, you know. And I put that in all my books, and I didn't realize I was doing that until like 3 books in.
Somebody pointed it out to you.
But I was like, you're very astute. But I do that. And so that as a writer, yes, that's something I've come to realize I do. And I love that I do that, because I think that's a message that can be given in endless ways and is so important, because that's going to be life for most of us. When hard things happen, they're not going to be magicked away. Not that I have anything against magic wands and books, and I love fantasy and all that stuff, but I don't like when problems just poof away.
Right.
I want to see characters triumph over them, and to find new ways to move on and to move forward and to find happiness, you know? What about you? What would you say?
So it's funny because it was, again, something that a reader pointed out to me, and they were like, you know, are you writing from personal experience? And I am. I did, you know, I feel like I chose a career field that pitted me against men in a lot of cases. And I really love that I kind of get to shed that light on what it's like to be a woman in a sports field. And I didn't set out to do that. I didn't set out to be like, this is my feminist agenda, but it comes through on the pages. But the one other thing that I feel like has come through as I've written is that it's important to have female friendships. That girls and women need to support each other as much as in any way else, and that, you know, that your friends can become your family.
Yeah. No, I love that. I appreciate that too. And that's something I always do, is I always have that key core girl friendship. or sister,
Right.
what's the word? Sisterhood. It's been a long day. You know, I love that you have that in your books. So that's true. I hadn't thought about that, but yeah.
Yeah. All right. So Lane, are you still out there? I don't know if he's still there or not.
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you.
Disembodied voice. Ooh. Okay, yeah, we have a few questions out here, so I'll just throw them at you. They're all for both of you.
Cool.
First one's from Courtney. She asks, do your stories develop around a character, or do the ideas for the stories inspire the character?
Yes, both sometimes. I feel like it's different. For me, it's different with every story. With Far From a Roll, I started out with a scene, and then I had to figure out how to make a character that would make sense in that scene. And obviously the scene is where she crashes her bike. Like, what kind of a girl would be riding a dress with a dog? You're riding a bike in a dress with a dog on Lake Michigan. And then from there, I kind of built the character around that scene. I had it in my head. It was really vivid and vibrant. And, you know, I knew that she needed to be the kind of girl that wasn't maybe super athletic. And she, you know, wasn't necessarily on the bike when she chose. And then from there, all those little bits and pieces kind of fell into place. What about you, Abigail?
Yeah, it varies from book to book. So for Girl on the Run, I had the initial premise came first, and then I had to figure out, okay, what is, you said, you start asking yourself questions about this, you know, your character, you know, what is her life, and what, you know, what is it going to be like for this girl to grow up without stability in terms of like her home life and constantly never being able to put down roots? What is that going to be like for her? And at what point does she reach that fed up stage, if you will?
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, what is her relationship like with her mother, that despite, you know, all of this constant, like, we're moving, whatever, that she still loves her mother and wants good things for her. So you almost start eliminating aspects of their character until you hone in. So it's like a sculpture, and you're sort of chipping away at the block until what you're left with is the character, at least most of the time. It's not always the case. Like for Every Other Weekend, I had the characters first, and then the story kind of spun out from there. And so it depends on the book.
Yep.
Okay, this is, can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Okay. This is from Cheyenne, who says hello to both of you. How long did it take you both to write these books?
Hi, Cheyenne. I'm thinking this is Cheyenne Young.
I think so too.
French, who we also were with in Texas earlier this year. For me, again, I wrote this book, at least the first like 100 pages in like 4 days. And then I finished the draft. I don't know, it probably took me like a month to finish it. But the original version of this book had a completely different second half, completely different, you know, secret revelation twist and all that stuff, which ultimately was decided that I went way too far. And like, it was, you know, so we went a different direction with it. So since I had to rewrite the ending, the second half, all in all, I would say it probably took about 2 months to like fully do. And normally I draft a book in about 3 months. So this was still really fast for me.
Yeah. So start to finish, so my editor saw my second draft at day 56. And that was, I do not recommend this.
Yeah.
I do not recommend this for anyone out there, because that was Becky writing, Becky barely living. I'm pretty sure that most authors at some point have that, where they're like, I don't know, I showered like 2 days ago and there's so many cans of Mountain Dew.
Yeah.
That was pretty much this book.
Okay, next we are hearing from Kristen. She just says simply, I'd love to hear about both of your plotting processes.
So Abigail, what do you usually do?
Okay. My plotting process has been developing from book to book. So again, with my very first book, If I Fiction, which was the first book I ever wrote, I had no idea what I was doing. I had that first scene in my head of a girl sitting on her roof talking to the boy next door, and I knew that she was sad and he was sad and neither of them wanted to go in their house. And then I just sort of had to start asking myself questions like, why doesn't she want to go in her house? Why doesn't he want to go to his house? What's going on? What happens if they go in their house? So when initially my plotting process was just a series of asking myself questions and seeing what happened. And I've developed that now. I always write now. I have to be much more efficient because when you have a contract, you can't take 6 years to write a book. So I always start with a synopsis, and I usually write about 10 pages, and I get to play around with the story arcs and the character development. And more recently, I would say in the last couple books, I've discovered the Snowflake Method. Have you ever tried that? Snowflake Method? I love this. So it's a process where you start with a single 1-sentence kind of pitch for your book. And then you take that sentence and you expand it into a paragraph. And then you take that paragraph and expand it into 3 paragraphs or 4 paragraphs. And then you do a little character chart for each of your character, not a character chart, but like a character synopsis, like a 1-page character synopsis. And then you come back and you write an expanded synopsis, like a 4-page synopsis or whatever. Anyway, so it's the idea of you start out small and you branch out from there and develop your story as you go. I don't usually do every step and I kind of will hop around, but it's really helpful to be able to start with like that 1 sentence, essentially like a log line for your book, and build out from there. And it's been really enjoyable to plot that way. So how about you? What's your process like?
So for my first 3 published books, they were completely pantsed. Like I sat down and I told the story I wanted to tell.
Yeah.
But the problem is when you're a pantser, you have to spend so much time revising. You have to correct your mistakes. Whereas Far From Normal, again, I wrote it super fast because I had a very detailed synopsis. I had to submit a synopsis, and now I will probably always write a synopsis. I don't know necessarily that I will like stick 100% to what happens in synopsis, like as you get to know your characters or you get to know your setting, or as things, as random romance develops in the story.
Yeah.
There's never random romance. It's always intentional romance in my book. But I would say that I am now a plotter, and I read Save the Cat, writes a novel by Jessica Brody, and I don't know necessarily that I follow.
I love that book.
Yeah, it's so good. I don't necessarily follow each of her steps, but I felt like I learned so much about like the guts of a story, or like the bits and pieces that should be in a story from that book. I felt like it was really helpful.
Yeah, I use Scrivener. Do you use Scrivener?
I tried to use Scrivener and I can't make it work. I don't know what's wrong with my brain.
We need to like talk afterwards. I need to convert
Okay.
you. I love Scrivener, and I have like a basic like Scrivener template that I have like Frankenstein together from all these different things that I like, with Snowflake Method, with Save the Cat, with all these different things that I've kind of cobbled together, and it's sort of my method that I like to organize things, and it's always changing, but it's helpful. I feel like if I'm the kind of person where I have to have direction and a plan to be efficient, you know. So, and I like to know my time, where I used to like, you sort of sit there and you stare at the screen, it's like, what's going to happen? And now it's kind of like every day I have a general sense of, okay, I want to kind of get to this point.
Right.
And then I just get to play with the scene. And it's still fun because I still get to discover the story and things.
Right.
But I'm not just like wandering around, without knowing where I'm going. I have that destination, and it's extremely helpful. I highly recommend writing this.
Yeah, I'm definitely I am a much more efficient writer.
Is it frozen?
Sorry, you're back.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, Layne, did you have another question for us?
Sorry, yes, I do. This one is from Stacy. This might be the last one.
Okay.
Okay, I know I love a book when after I finish the story, I miss the characters. What character were you most sad to say goodbye to? And do you still think about what would happen next after the book's end? And do you have a private epilogue running commentary?
Yes. So for me, the character that I miss most is the dog, Watford, because I love dogs. I am such a dog person. And so Watford was based on a dog that I actually dog sat when I lived in Chicago. He was this great big boxer, and he was drooly and disgusting and like adorable all at the same time. And so I have a dog now, but she weighs 13 pounds. She's not quite the same. She's still adorable, just not as disgusting. But yeah. So I miss Watford, and yes, like there's a whole like, what if Maddie's next internship was in Spain? Like, what if she met in Spain? In my head, I play with these scenes and situations. What about you?
I don't want to say from Girl on the Run because part of the fun of the book is not knowing, you know, who's representing themselves accurately or not. But I will say from previous books, I think about Daniel a lot, and I put him in 2 different books. He's in If I Fix You and Every Other Weekend. And he's the one I most often get emails about, like, what's Daniel doing? Please write another book for Daniel. And I always say, you know, I think about Daniel. I know some things that happened to him after If I Fix You. I don't know. If my publisher ever asked for a Daniel book, it might happen.
You might make it happen. Mm-hmm.
Let them know you want one if you want one.
Awesome.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm coming back on here now. Hi. Thank you both. That's the last question we have there in the comments. So I want to send a huge thank you out to Becky Wallace, her book Far From Normal, and Abigail Johnson.
Yeah.
And Abigail's book is Girl on the Run. Both of these books can be purchased through Weller's. The links are on our wall as well as the event page. I think that's it. I want to thank you both for being here again and for joining us. It's been a delight.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
And to the rest of you, thank you for joining us. A reminder, this will stay on our Facebook wall for quite some time if you missed the live event this evening. So as I like to say at the end of every event, be kind to each other, wear your masks, get out there and vote, and be well. Have a good night. See you next time.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.